Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Hello, my darlings. I will finish up. The police arrested my parents on Tuesday. But for Mother's Day today, I have a story for you by Loves Me Some Fiction. And as tomorrow is Mother's Day, I'm going to read you A Mother's Love. Mommy, wake up. I squint my eyes open to see Luca, my 7-year-old son, staring at me with his big blue eyes. I feel him nudge me as he yells, "Let's go, Mommy. I want pancakes for breakfast." Okay, Luca. Okay, give Mommy a few minutes to get up and I'll meet you in the kitchen. That was enough for Luca to run out of the room excitedly, ready for the day to start. I, on the other hand, was hoping I could sleep for another hour or 5. Begrudgingly, I get up, head to the bathroom to wash my face, brush my teeth, and change into some casual Saturday clothes. I head to the mirror to begin applying my makeup and really notice my face in that moment. The wrinkles, the signs of aging, the bags under my eyes. I was tired. I was drained, and the day hadn't even started yet. You see, I'm a single mother. My husband left Luca and I when Luca was barely 6 months old. Something about he never wanted to be a father. I knew he was going to be a deadbeat dad before I even conceived Luca, but I did it anyways because I wanted a child. I wanted someone to love me unconditionally, to never leave my side, to rely and depend on me. I wanted a child for selfish reasons, but I didn't realize it at the time. I figured that if my husband left, it wouldn't matter to me because being a single mom was a piece of cake, and I could handle it easily. Clearly, my face is living proof that I was very, very wrong. As I headed into the kitchen to start making pancakes, Luca yells, "So what are we going to do today, Mommy?" As much as I loved my son, I needed one day to myself to just unwind and relax. So the plan was to take him to his grandma's for the day so I could do just that. "Well, Luca, today you get to go to Grammy's and spend the whole day with her." Luca frowned. "But Mommy, I want to spend the day with you." I sighed and said, "I know, baby, but Mommy has some things she needs to do today, and you haven't seen Grammy in a few weeks, and she really wants to take you to the amusement park. Remember, there's that new ride that just opened up?" Luca's face lit up. Amusement park and a new ride is all it took for my son to forget all about wanting to spend the day with Mommy. Now all he could talk about is how much fun he is going to have with Grammy at the amusement park, as he devours his pancakes as fast as he can. As Luca was finishing up with breakfast, I packed up his backpack with all his essentials, cleaned him up, grabbed my purse and keys, and locked the front door just as the taxi pulled up and honked its horn. As we stepped outside, I noticed what a beautiful sunny spring day it was. The weather was in the process of changing, so all the cold, rainy weather we had produced vibrant, beautiful flowers that were now visibly blooming, and the grass was as green as can be, all the while doing wonders for my allergies. Thank the heavens for Zyrtec. Luca runs into the taxi, and I hop into the back seat with him and provide the address to the taxi driver. We've been driving for a little ways before the taxi stops at a red light. Luca is going on, telling me all the fun things him and Grammy will be doing at the amusement park, and how he wishes I was there with them. But that he will make sure to get me a souvenir from the money he knows Grammy will give him. Through Luca's words, I try and list in my head the relaxing things I will be doing today, making sure to remember to grab a bottle of wine, a nice bath bomb, maybe rent a few movies. I wonder which movies I should rent. Mommy, are you listening? I come out of my daze as the light turns green and the taxi slowly begins to move again. I turn to Luca and say, Luca, what? Only to see a car speeding directly towards Luca's side window. Luca! I scream and throw my body onto him, and then all goes black. I wake up to the complete and utter darkness. Luca. I scan my surroundings with my hands, trying to see if he's next to me. Luca, are you there? Silence. I try and stand up, but my body is so weak that I dissolve back down onto the ground. I decide to crawl around to find some source of light so I can see where I am. When I bump into furniture. Was that a couch? I move my hand across and notice that it is a couch. Wait. I move my hands to the right of the couch and feel a table. Moving my hand down the leg of the table, I touch the Incredible Hulk figurine that Luca had been playing with before we left the house. I saw him drop it on the floor and told myself I'd pick it up later. This is my living room. With every ounce of energy I had, I forced myself to stand up and go directly to where I know the lamp is standing. Sure enough, it was there, and I was able to finally turn on the light and see into my living room. A million thoughts are racing through my head. How did I end up in my living room after that horrible accident? Wasn't it just the morning? How is it pitch black outside? But most importantly, where is Luca? How is it pitch black outside? But most importantly, where is Luca? I try to remain calm and collected. I started to try and think rationally. Maybe I had a concussion and was taken to the hospital? My mom came and picked up Luca, and I was somehow released and ended up home resting while my mom watched Luca. Yeah, that must be it. I decided to call a taxi and head to my mom's to try and pick Luca up. I rummaged around the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, even Luca's bedroom to try and find my phone, but it was nowhere to be found. I must have left it at the hospital or at my mom's. As sore as I was, I decided to take a long walk to my mom's so I can pick up Luca and figure out what the hell happened since the accident. The moment I opened the front door and stepped outside, I knew something was wrong. Everything looked the same. All the buildings were there, but there was no one in them. All the houses were there, but all the lights were off. All the cars were parked in their driveways, but no cars were on the road. There was no sign of human life, just silence. The only light source that I had were street lamps and the stars in the sky. At this point, I was petrified. What was going on? I know where I am, but it looks foreign to me. Mommy, please come back. I knew that voice was Luca's. I just knew it. I looked around me, but there was no sight of Luca anywhere. Luca? Luca, where are you, baby? Silence. I started running out into the street, to the park across the way. No sign of Luca. I ran into my neighbor's backyard. No sign of Luca. I panicked and banged on my neighbor's door. only to find it unlocked. They had Luca. I barged into the house and yelled for Luca. I ran through each and every room, rummaging through every single closet, only to not find Luca. I tried every neighboring home, each door unlocked, each home empty, Luca not in any of them. I walked out of the final house and collapsed on the front lawn, crying out in agony. Where the hell am I? Where are you, Luca? Never in a million years would I wish this feeling on my worst enemy. The feeling of absolute terror, confusion, and helplessness. Right before I woke up, I was in a horrible accident where a car ran the red light and sped into the taxi I was in with my son, Luca. The impact was the last thing I remember before I wake up in a ghost town. But the problem is, it's my town, my neighborhood, my home. And just as I heard my son Luca calling out to me, asking me to come back, but I can't seem to find him anywhere. Why did he say to come back? Am I in some purgatory where I can somehow hear him still and he's alive? Am I in some different dimension where I somehow can slip between this dimension and the real dimension where Luca is? But wait, why is there no one here but me? I figure there's no way I'm going to find Luca and get some answers in the state that I was in. So I decided to go back inside my house and get some sleep before I began my search in the morning. I lay in bed and look at the clock on my nightstand and see that it says 12 o'clock. I immediately fall asleep, but had a very restless sleep. I woke up sporadically throughout the night, only to fall back asleep when I noticed it was still dark outside. Mommy, wake up! I want pancakes! I jump out of bed. Luca, where are you? Only to realize it was a dream. Oh, what I would do to wake up to those big blue eyes again. I get up and look outside. How is it still so dark? I glance over at the clock and no, it can't be. How is it still showing 12 o'clock? I've been sleeping for hours, yet no time has passed by. How is this even possible? I immediately change my clothes and run downstairs and open the front door. No sign of anyone again. Silence. At this point, I told myself that I can either succumb to my fears and eventually die without ever finding Luca, or I will do everything in my power to get answers. I decided on the latter. So my walk to my mother's house began. My mother lived on the opposite side of town, and I've done that walk a few times with Luca before. I remember one time when Luca was 3, we decided to take advantage of the beautiful summer day and walk to Grammy's. We stopped by at the park across the street from our house for some fun before venturing down the street, out of the neighborhood and past downtown. Our town is fairly small, so everyone knows each other, and our downtown is filled with mom and pop shops that everyone in town loves to support. We passed by the shops, and Luca, being the extroverted, full-of-life child he was, waved to everyone he passed by, and boy did they love Luca. Many of the shop owners would come out with free treats for him the moment they saw us walking by, all the while reminding me how blessed I am to have a son like Luca. Look, Mommy, I bought you another souvenir from the amusement park. I turned around. Luca, where are you? I can hear you, but I can't see you. Silence. Luca? Absolute silence. At this point, I know Luca is alive. I just know it, but confusion sets in. Why can I hear him, but he can't hear me? I start to increase my pace and make it to downtown. Just as I expected, no one in shops, no one in the street. Maybe Luca is in one of the shops. I decide to walk through each and every one of them in search of my son. Each shop was empty as can be. As I stepped out of the last shop, I noticed a figure about 15 feet ahead of me. It's sitting on the sidewalk, and it's a little boy. Luca! I run as fast as I can to the little boy, all the while shouting my son's name. As soon as he hears me, he turns around to face me, screams and runs and hides behind the tree. I caught a glimpse of his face. It's not Luca, but it's definitely a young, very terrified little boy. I calmly approach him and say, "Sorry I scared you there, but I thought you were my son. Are you lost, little guy?" He stares at me in silence, analyzing my face, trying to determine if he can trust me. Finally, he makes up his mind and slowly nods his head. "Did you lose your mommy or daddy?" I don't know. I know where I am because I've been here with my mommy and daddy before. We used to go to that candy shop behind you all the time, but I don't know where they are." Fully understanding just how this little boy felt, I knew I had to make sure he was with me until he found his parents. I held out my hand and said, "Well, I'm looking for my son Luca. I lost him too. How about we look for my son and your mommy and daddy together?" The little boy nodded through his tears and held out his hand to grab mine. We began to walk out of downtown and slowly make our way to my mother's neighborhood. "Well, we might as well learn a bit about each other. My name is Ellie. What's yours?" "My name is Ethan." "Hi, Ethan. When was the last time you saw your mommy and daddy?" "Well, we were at the lake in a boat. Me and Daddy really wanted to go fishing, but Mommy hates being out in the water. I don't know how, but we got her to come along, but she just sat there while me and Daddy tried to catch fish. Daddy caught a pretty big one, and I caught a teeny tiny one." Boy, this kid sure sounded like Luca. He continued, "Well, then Daddy caught a really, really big fish, and he was having a hard time bringing it onto the boat. Then the boat flips over, and we're all in the water." He looks down in sadness. "I was never a very good swimmer, and so I kept going under the water, and I couldn't breathe. I heard Mommy and Daddy calling my name, but I couldn't see where they were. Then everything turned black, and I woke up in my house. It was very dark, so I found my nightlight and turned it on. Then I called for Mommy and Daddy, and they didn't hear them. Then I went outside and walked right down the street to downtown where I saw you. I was looking around, and I hear my mommy's voice say, 'We're here, Ethan.' I looked around, but I didn't see her. So I sat down and started to cry. Then I saw you." Tears started forming. Then I paused. Both Ian and I were in a horrible accident, and we both ended up here alone. We get to my mother's house, and I immediately notice her car in the driveway, hoping and praying she's home with Luca. Just as I'm about to open the front door, I hear Luca. "Mommy, Grammy went to heaven, but I promised her I will never give up. I know you'll come home soon." I look around. I turn to Ethan and ask, "Ethan, did you hear that?" Ethan nods his head and says, "Yes. Was that your son, Mrs. Ellie? He sounds like a really big boy." I paused. Ethan was right. It was definitely Luca. I'd recognize my son's voice anywhere, but it sounded different. It sounded older. And why did he say Grammy went to heaven? Ethan and I walked up and to the unlocked door, only to once again find emptiness. At this point, I collapse on the floor in a flood of tears. Ethan comes up to me with his hand on my shoulder and says, "Mrs. Ellie, don't cry. We'll find my mommy and daddy and Luca. I promise." I look up at him, seeing the vibrant, loving personality I saw in my son. I saw Luca in him. I smiled, gave him a hug, and said, "Yes, we will, Ethan." Growing up, I was always taught that the world's most difficult questions could be answered at church. Well, all I know is, if there was a God, I'm not sure why the hell he would put me through this misery. At this point, I feel like it's been years. Ethan and I have been walking around town aimlessly, trying to find any sort of life, to no avail. Any sort of sign of Luca or Ethan's parents, to no avail. We occasionally hear them, but we have yet to find them. Oh, and did I mention that it has never once become day? It's just been night. For all I know, the clock could still say 12 o'clock. I knew I was living in a version of hell, and if this is what purgatory was, then hell couldn't have been that much worse. I knew I had to get out of here, and I knew I had to get Ethan out of here too. He cried himself to sleep every night, waking up most nights to nightmares of him being in the water, trying to find his parents. He was living his own version of hell, and I didn't want to see him suffer any longer. We decided our last hope was to walk to church, beg the Lord Almighty to relieve us from this hell, this purgatory, and send us to our judgment. As we were walking through the neighborhood, I saw the church up ahead. I turned, looked down at Ethan, and said, "Are you sure you want to do this, Ethan?" "Yes, Mrs. Ellie. I want to see my mommy and daddy." I couldn't bear to tell him that there was a very real chance he may never see them again. I couldn't bear to tell myself there was a very real chance I would never see Luca again. As we were approaching the church doors, I breathed in. "Okay, Ellie, this is it." As soon as I touch the doorknob, I hear Luca, older Luca. "Mom, I want you to meet my fiancée, Michelle. I know you would love her just as much as I do." "Fiancée? Luca has a fiancée? How can this be? How much time has passed since we've been here?" I knew in that very moment that enough was enough. This was my only chance to see my son or completely die trying. We walked into the church and saw something very much different than what we're used to. Lit candles. I glanced up at the front of the church and, are my eyes deceiving me? Is that a person? A priest? "Come in, Ellie." The person turned around, and I see a man dressed in all white. All I see is a bright light where his face should be. I sit Ethan at the first pew and walk up to the man. "Ellie, were you happy with your life?" I pause. "Yes, Father, Sir, God." Although I couldn't see past the light where his face should be, I could tell he cracked a smile. "Think very carefully. Were you honestly happy with your life? With Luca?" Rage started to build within me. Yes, of course I was happy with Luca. He was my son. I paused. Was I really happy? I would always complain. I would snap at Luca, and any chance I had I would send him to my mother's. I honestly was not happy with my life. Feeling defeated, I answered, "No, I wasn't very happy." "So why do you want to go back?" Why did I want to go back? I mean, if this voice, who sounds just like Luca, is in fact Luca, my mother has passed away, and Luca is getting older and living his life. Now he has a fiancée who he loves. Why would I want to go back to a life of loneliness? Why would I want to put myself through that? But then it hit me. Luca is talking to me. He must be visiting me somewhere. He promised he would not give up on me. He still calls me Mommy. He needs me, and I need him. I turn around and look at Ethan, and he knew. He nods his head and smiles and says, "I'll be fine." Tears forming in my eyes, I say, "I promise you, Ethan, I will find you." Turning back to the deity, I say, "I had Luca for my own selfish reasons. I wanted to be loved unconditionally. I wanted to fill a void I was feeling. I never realized how challenging it is to raise a child on your own. I never realized how much I took my son for granted. There were so many times when I was close to giving up, but the moment I saw that car drive right towards him, I was reminded of one thing. My son is my world. And if my son was not part of my world, I had no world. And all this time of searching for him, and hearing his voice as he grew older and older, knowing he is still searching for me and not giving up, it made me realize one thing. I want to go back, not because I want to, but because my son needs me, and I need him." The deity paused for quite some time before saying, "Very well." Immediately a bright light illuminated from him, fully encompassing me. I began falling and falling into the light until finally I stopped and opened my eyes. My vision is cloudy, but I began to look around and I no longer see darkness. I see light. "Mommy?" I stop. I would recognize that voice no matter what age he was. "Luca?" I look up to my right and I see Luca as an adult, tears streaming down his face. He chuckles and says, "I told you I'd never give up on you, Mommy." After our long embrace, filled with tears, laughter, and more tears, Luca filled me in on exactly what happened after the accident. The car that ran the red light hit his side of the car, but me shielding him saved his life. I, however, fell into a coma for the next 30 years. He's now 36, and I'm 60. After Luca went to get us some dinner, I stood up to use the restroom. As I walked past the mirror, I paused and glanced at myself. I saw myself for the first time in 30 years. I saw an older woman, but I also saw something else. Pure happiness. As I was waiting for Luca to return, I decided to take a stroll down the hall. As I was nearing the end of the hall, I looked to my right and saw 2 elderly parents watching over their son. Their son looked to be the same age as Luca. I looked a bit closer and noticed his face. It was Ethan. I opened the door to their room and looked at his parents. The look of pure exhaustion and worry was resting on their face, but the unconditional love they felt for their son was apparent. They too never gave up on him. I walked in, glanced at them, stretched my arm out and asked, "May I?" Albeit confused, they nodded their heads. I walked up to Ethan, held his hand, and whispered, "Ethan, I promised I would find you." Within a few minutes, he opens his eyes, looks right at me, and smiles. "Hi, Mrs. Ellie." So quoth this raven. Well, that was harder to get through than I thought. I hope you all have a fabulous Mother's Day. And thank you so much for listening. And a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Ermin Case and Darren and Jennifer Daw. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.